Welcome, friends, to Beyond the Crucible, the podcast that dares to talk about setback and failure, but not so we can commiserate. It's so we can elevate. I'm Gary Schneeberger, the co-host of the show, and our mission today is to show you, to encourage you that your crucible experiences, those tragedies and challenges you faced or are facing right now, don't define you. They refine you. They did not happen to you. They happened for you. And I don't know many people, probably don't know anyone who knows that better than the host of this program, the founder of Beyond the Crucible, and my friend Warwick Fairfax. Warwick, we've got another exciting episode, fun episode. It's the second episode of our summer series on movies, which we're calling Classic Films, Classic Crucible Lessons. So this is going to be, I think, a very, very, very informative and entertaining discussion for folks.
Well said, Gary. I think it is going to be a very interesting one. Definitely looking forward to it.
And to level set you all, folks, on the series, 2 years ago, Warwick and I did a summer series where we talked about movie heroes, talked about the lessons we could learn about coming back from a crucible from movie heroes in some of our favorite movies. Those were sports heroes. Those were superheroes. Those were action heroes. They were all, and historical heroes. And the idea there is, what happened is we had such a good time doing that we wanted to revisit that series, but with a twist this summer. Instead of heroic movies, we're focusing on iconic movies, classics that made the American Film Institute's list of the most beloved, most critically acclaimed, the best films ever made. So we're focusing each week in Classic Films, Classic Crucible Lessons on discussing a movie on the AFI's top 100 list to unpack the lessons we can learn and apply on our own journeys beyond our crucibles. And this week, in part 2 of this series, we're going to talk about The Godfather Part 1, just so it doesn't get confused with The Godfather Part 2. So it's part 2 of our series. The conversation's all geared to The Godfather, which isn't called Part 1. It's just called The Godfather, but it's the first Godfather film. And as we do every time we do one of these, Warwick, I want to ask you a kickoff question, and that's this. Why are films such a ripe wellspring to pull lessons from about crucible experiences, about bouncing back from crucible experiences, and sometimes, as we will find here, how not to bounce back from crucible experiences? Why is this such a ripe ground film?
Yeah, well, Gary, classic movies typically portray a protagonist, a hero, or maybe in this case, somebody that could have been a hero, up against, long odds, a crisis. And even if it's an action movie, there's typically a test of character. How will a protagonist respond when everything is against him or her? How will they deal with this crucible, if you will? And so, in some movies, the hero is not defined by their worst day, by their crucible. They find a way to rise above it. And in other cases, they are actually indeed defined by their crucible, by their worst day, and their character is molded by an event or a tragedy. And we're going to find in this case, actually, like last week's with Citizen Kane, that the main character is indeed defined by their crucible, and in fact, a series of crucibles. So it's really a fascinating story and a fascinating journey that we're about to discuss.
Yeah. And folks, just so you know, not every movie that we're going to cover is going to feature someone who does it the wrong way, as we'll unpack here. And there are still lessons, even in those cases, as we hope you learned last week when we did talk about Citizen Kane, that there are many lessons you can learn about how to weather a crucible, even from people who haven't done it well. And in The Godfather, spoiler alert, Warwick just said it. We're going to have, it's a similar kind of story. This is not someone you want to emulate when we're all said and done. So the opening scene of The Godfather, let's set the movie up. It's a sprawling epic film. Won the Academy Award in 1972. It is, interestingly, the number 2 film on AFI's top 100 list. Last week, Citizen Kane was number 1, is number 1 on AFI's list. We're not going to do them in order for 100 movies, but we're going to, jump around still in sequential order, but the next one's not going to be the third or the fourth one. We're going to go, drop down. We pick movies that we think have good crucible learnings in them. So here's how The Godfather opens. The opening scene introduces us to the godfather of the title, Vito Corleone or Corleone. It's interesting. They say it both ways in the movie. So we may say it both ways here. Who knows? And his family. It's set during the wedding of his only daughter, Connie, and the time of it is right after World War II. It's set in 1945. That's when The Godfather begins. In the extended set piece that is Connie's wedding, we also meet Vito's other children. Sonny, who shows himself hot-headed and impetuous. He attacks a photographer, for example, who's shooting pictures of all the vehicles in the parking, in the driveway at the wedding, trying to, find out which mob families might be there. He's also having a barely concealed affair with one of the bridesmaids. So that's Sonny's character. Sonny's character as an individual, Sonny's character as a trait, very clearly not strong. Then there's Fredo. Fredo is depicted as shy and a bit unsure of himself, not the black sheep of the family as much as the gentle lamb. It's clear Sonny is in the family business, which is the mafia, but Fredo doesn't seem to fill any important role. He seems to be a little lost. That's the impression you get of Fredo when you meet him. We also meet Tom Hagen in this scene. He's not a Corleone by blood, but by circumstance. It's explained that Sonny found him an orphan that he took home. He was taken in by the Corleones and raised as a son. He is also the family business advisor, a lawyer, the consigliere of the family for Don Vito. Very important role, as Michael explains at some point in the film. It's a very important role for a mob family, a consigliere, an advisor who helps the Don, the leader of the family, run things. And finally, we meet the Corleone we'll be focusing on here, the one whose narrative arc in the film offers the most evocative crucible lessons, and that is Michael Corleone. He's the youngest, and we learn when he shows up to the wedding late with his girlfriend, Kay, he's not part of the family business. The military uniform he wears shows he has dedicated himself to serving his country. Key point to bring up here before we really start discussing things, I'm just trying to set the playing field here, is that Michael knows all about the family business, but he's a bit detached from it. So much so that he openly tells Kay's secrets about their business, especially about Luca Brasi, who is a bit of a monster of a man who's the family enforcer. When singer Johnny Fontaine shows up to the wedding, he matter-of-factly, Michael does, tells Kay the story of how his father got Johnny Fontaine out of a contract with a big band leader threatening violence. Kay is shocked, but Michael calmly assures her, "That's my family, not me." And we as the audience believe him. He seems not embarrassed by his family's business, not horrified by it, simply detached from it. Whatever his vision for his future is, it does not seem to be, at this point, criminal enterprise. So, Warwick, I've done a lot of talk and setting the stage here. How would you describe the life trajectory, a phrase we use a lot, of Michael Corleone in this opening scene?
It's an interesting scene. It's a long scene, the wedding scene in the opening minutes. And we have Michael with his girlfriend, Kay. I mean, they're just looking at everything. Michael seems detached, ambivalent. What's interesting, he's not shocked. He's not horrified by what goes on. He's not ignorant. He knows what his father, Vito, does. He knows what the family business is. He knows what they do. Now, he may not be planning to go into it, but, in a sad and eerie way, he doesn't seem to have a strong aversion or hostility to it. Now, he, might say, well, this is not really my plan or path, but this is what my family does. It's as if they were bakers, lawyers,
right, shoemakers or something, right?
I don't know that I want to be a shoemaker, but nothing wrong with it. But I think I want to do something else. It's almost that's in that detached way. And, just a sense of detachment and ambivalence. And it's sad in a way because given how horrific it is, the family business, the fact that he doesn't have a strong aversion or hostility to it does not bode well. It does not seem like there's this strong compass, strong moral compass, strong compass at all that's guiding his life. It's just, this is what my family does. I'm not planning to go into it, but I'm aware of what it is. And it's just in almost this detached observer-like attitude. It's sort of strange in a way as we're looking at these opening scenes.
Yeah. And here's the moment in this episode, folks, where I reveal that I am a bit of a Godfather fan nerd. You'll see here, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see this is called the Godfather Notebook. And this is something that Francis Ford Coppola, the writer and director of The Godfather, he carried this thing around. Look how thick that thing is. He carried this thing around, and this is an exact replica of his notebook filled with his notes. And I bring it up at this juncture because one of the things that Warwick was just talking about is exactly what Coppola was going for in that opening scene. I'm going to open here to where he talks about the wedding scene. And this is just a couple lines from what Francis Ford Coppola wrote down about how he wanted that to be depicted well before the movie was ever shot, well before he even wrote the script. This is what he said, that Kay and Michael he thinks he wanted them to be the talk of the wedding as those things go. It's common knowledge that Michael went against his father's wishes by joining the service. That's the backstory that the movie doesn't talk about, but because he's wearing a uniform, right? His father, that wasn't what his father wanted to do. The novel by Mario Puzo talks about that. But it also says that the fact that he's not in the bridal party, he has no tux, would be helpful to set him apart. And of course, where he sits. He doesn't sit with the family. So this outsider, this guy this man who's part of the family, as Warwick points out, he's not horrified by what's going on, but he's not connected to it. He sits away from the family during the wedding. He's very open with family secrets that could get the family in trouble if they get out to the authorities. That is what Francis Ford Coppola was going for, was to have Michael as a bit of on the outside looking in, which I think is just really fascinating for his character and the development of his character that we see throughout the movie, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as you're talking about Francis Ford Coppola and his notebook, I would have to say, or I would have to guess, he's trying to make Michael Corleone an interesting character. That would be difficult for people to think, oh, I love Michael Corleone. He's such a good guy because he's involved in the mob business. That would be challenging. But it would be very easy to paint him as a kind of monster that you hate and despise and have no sympathy for, can't even relate. And it would seem Francis Ford Coppola didn't want that. He wanted at least for us to feel ambivalent so that we didn't hate him. We could identify, maybe not identify, but we could understand him and relate maybe in some small way. So I'm sure that was part of the intention, because it would have been very easy to paint this guy as a monster, as an awful human being who you just want to have suffer and be miserable and delight in his misery. Clearly, Coppola was not looking for that. He wanted somebody that we could at least relate to in a small way and at the very least be ambivalent to rather than openly hostile.
Right. And that is, in fact, in this notebook, the word that Coppola uses about how he wanted audiences to feel about Michael Corleone. He wanted them to feel ambivalent, not rooting for, not rooting against, just kind of, right, they're trying to figure him out like people in the movie are trying to figure him out as the movie unfurls. And I think that both is an interesting point. It's also a great point because I can get this, probably weighs about 6 pounds. I can get this off of my desk now, so I can move around a little bit as we move forward with talking about the things that happen in The Godfather. So it's what comes next is the first of three big crucibles in Michael's life that begins to change the trajectory of his life. Vito rejects an offer from another mafia leader named Virgil Sollozzo, whose nickname is the Turk, just in case you didn't think he was, just so you know, he's not a guy to be messed with. Vito rejects a deal that the Turk wants him to join him in the narcotics business. Vito, though he's a mob chieftain, calmly refuses the partnership against the idea of getting into the business of drugs because he thinks it's dirty. That leads to Sollozzo putting out a hit on Vito in an effort to get Sonny, who expresses an interest in the drug deal in front of Sollozzo to his father's disapproval, who becomes the new Don if Vito dies. So Sonny thinks the deal could kind of be good. That Sollozzo catches that, and that drives what happens next. Vito is then attacked by Sollozzo's henchmen, shot, but Michael finds himself, out of love for his father, getting involved for the first time in the family business when that happens. So Sollozzo, seeing Sonny would go for this deal, puts a hit on Vito, and Michael then, because he loves his father, gets himself a little closer to being part of the family business. So he goes to the hospital where his dad is in serious condition and discovers all the family bodyguards have been thrown out by the police. He hatches a quick plan aided by a man named Enzo, who's a baker his father helped avoid deportation. Michael moves his father to a hidden room and then stands outside with Enzo, posing as bodyguards to dissuade a pair of hitmen who are coming to finish the job on Vito. In a very, very telling scene, he leans into his father. Michael leans into Vito and says, "I'm with you now," to his dad. Vito smiles slightly, but sheds a tear. It's our first sign that Vito does not want his son to be part of the family business. It's a push-pull moment. He's happy his son's there. He loves his son. His son he feels safe, but he's also, it's our first, why is that tear there? We'll find out more about that, but he's happy, but also not happy that Michael is now so close to the family business. So, Warwick, that's a scene in which Michael first shows he has the talent to play an important role in the family business. His vision for his life, and we don't know what it is at this point, whatever that vision might be, though, goes up in smoke if it's not to be in the family business, because this brings him closer and closer into that circle. What are some of the key beats in that scene that show he's now going to live, as you've put it, somebody else's vision, right? He's going to live what he's the heir now in some ways. He's caught up now in the family business. You can feel it pulling him in. What are some of the key beats that follow that?
Yeah, in a sense, it all starts with the hit on Vito, that in some sense, Sonny, by his lack of discretion, is speaking up in a meeting with other mafia dons and shows that he actually is open to dealing with drugs. If he hadn't said that, then the Turk may not have thought, aha, I've got an opportunity. Let's put a hit on Vito so that we can get the Corleone clan into the drug business. Because, they say so much, oh, it's not personal, it's business. And in this particular case, I think it was just business in terms of the Turk. And so by Sonny showing that lack of discretion, he certainly bears part of that responsibility. So once that happened, then the events are in play to change the course of Michael Corleone's life. So here we have Michael's dad, Vito. He's in hospital. As you say, there are no guards, no police. Everybody's gone. Michael is a smart guy. He may not be in the family business, but he knows what's going on. The word has gone out. The hit's going on. and everything is clear to enable the hit to finish off Vito. That's lying in hospital and probably pretty critical condition. So I think what we see Michael's natural intelligence and cunning and calm. I mean, he's been in World War II. He was a war hero, as we're told. Clearly, he's somebody that's calm under fire. When you're under fire, that tests the mettle of people. And clearly, Michael Corleone is somebody when other people might fall away in panic, he's going to be calm and cool and figure out, okay, what's the best way forward, which in wartime is obviously very valuable. So here, that too is valuable. So he calmly puts his dad in another room, goes out there with the baker who's, kind of quaking in his boots, and pretends that they, have guns inside their jackets, and, the Turk's henchmen kind of roll by in a car and have a look at these two fellas and says, yeah, maybe we'll kind of keep going. It was a very smart, brave move. And at this point, Michael hasn't done anything illegal, so to speak, but yet it's clear that it's a step on the way to shifting the arc of Michael's life. I think what we see here is Michael may be ambivalent in terms of what he does with his life. It's unwritten. You don't sense a strong vision either way. But amidst all the ambivalence and detachment in his life, there is one area of his life where he's not at all detached and he's not at all ambivalent. And that's the love of his family, and in particular, the love of his dad, Vito. It's really the core of who Michael Corleone is. And so at that point, we can see when his dad's life is threatened, we'll see as the story unfolds, he will do whatever he can to protect his family, and in particular, his dad. That's really the arc, it's not really a moral compass, but it's sort of the anchor for his soul, be it for bad or for good, is his dad. It's definitely family first, his dad first. And in normal circumstances, it's not wrong to love your parents, to love your dad. It's not wrong. But in this case, as we'll see, it has tragic, devastating consequences for the direction of his life. It almost inexorably, like a black hole or a vortex, pulls him down a path of devastation and destruction. It's all because of the love that he has for his father. And once that hit happens against Vito, it's almost like the die is cast. When Vito gets hit, it seems like it almost feels inevitable in hindsight, but that has huge consequences, that hit on Vito Corleone.
Right. And that speaks to that ambivalence that Coppola wants audiences to feel about Michael, right? He loves his dad so much so that he risks his life. My goodness, that's something to be applauded, something that indicates, that you want to like. I mean, you like Michael in that moment because he's helping his dad out. But then, right, the coldness of the other things that follow, well, you don't like him so much. So that back and forth, that yin and yang of, yes, good, Michael did a good thing there. Oh, Michael did a bad thing here. That is one of the geniuses, I think, of what Coppola does here. And it does have great application to what we talk about at Beyond the Crucible, the idea of what is key and important to bouncing beyond your crucible, to moving beyond your crucible. And we'll get to that point in detail. I did want to point one thing out, Warwick, about the scene with Enzo when the bodyguards or the hitmen drive away. There's a scene where Enzo tries to smoke a cigarette because he's just a baker, right? He's just there because he's grateful to Vito because Vito kept him from being deported, and he just wants to pay his respects. And he walks into the middle of this like mafia hit thing, and he's all freaked out, and he's outside and he's trying to pretend he's a bodyguard. And when the hitmen leave, he wants to smoke a cigarette, but his hands are shaking so badly he can't get them out of the pack. So Michael helps him. Michael puts his hand forward and lights his cigarette with his own lighter. Michael does. And there's this beautiful scene, very, very sly, small scene, but Michael looks at his hand and notices his hand's not shaking. Michael notices he's not scared. And I believe in that moment, Michael probably knows, you know what? Not only is he being pulled into the family business, he realizes he'll do okay in the family business because his nerves are not affected by the things that happen in the family business. I thought that was a fascinating scene on the arc of where Michael Corleone goes. Any comment you want to make about that?
Yeah, I think it's such a good point, Gary. In one sense, what he went through in World War II was very good preparation for the family business. Not at all what Vito thought. I think if Vito realized it was going to be good preparation, he'd probably be all for him going into battle in World War II, if you'd really kind of put the dots together. But in war, you have to be very calm under fire. And Michael certainly is. Nothing phases him. And you're right. At that point, he realizes I have the temperament. And when other people are losing theirs, I could do very well in this business if I want to get into it. I certainly have the aptitude, but as if not more importantly, I have the temperament to remain calm and detached, and at least, in a sense, to live out the mantra that you hear mob bosses say, hey, it's just business, it's not personal, as they're, putting hits on people. Because you got to know in this business, when is it too much? When is it not enough? I mean, it sounds so very cold, but you don't want to create some massive mob war that's bad for business. So it's a crazy amoral way of thinking. In other words, morality doesn't enter into it. It's just what's good for business. It's kind of crazy, but you're right. This scene shows that Michael has the right temperament for this business, terrible though it may be.
Yeah. Yeah. And the trajectory of his life after that scene becomes even more pronounced when he hatches the plan to kill Sollozzo and the police captain, McCluskey, who is dirty and he's the bodyguard of the Turk, during a meeting. His eyes and demeanor are icy when he tells Sonny and Tom Hagen that his desire to kill those who tried to kill his father isn't personal. It's strictly business, right? Michael is, that's when he begins to turn cold, and he will increasingly turn the looks on his face, the words that come out of his mouth, even to his family, will become increasingly cold, as opposed to the warmth that Vito, even though they're going to be in the same business, right? It's the same family business. The goals are still the same. There was a warmth to Vito that Michael doesn't possess. And in fact, if he did at some time possess it early in the movie, he seems to smile a bit at the wedding and he's happy with his girlfriend, Kay. But as he gets into the family business, that begins to seep away from him and he becomes very, very, very cold. So the idea that it's not personal, it's strictly business, he says. It's his father's mantra and now he's adopted it. One of his father's lieutenants, Clemenza, shows him how to handle the gun for the hit, because Michael's going to kill Sollozzo and McCluskey. He tells Michael, we were all very proud of you being a hero and all, talking about his war service, which was heroic. But he's not that young man anymore. He doesn't acknowledge the compliment. He just continues practicing firing. He's already moved on in that scene. He's already moved on from the old Michael Corleone, who was the war hero, right? He gets a compliment and he doesn't even acknowledge it. He just continues. Here's how I have to fire in order to kill this man who tried to kill my father. It's at this moment that a case can be made that Michael Corleone loses more than whatever might have been a noble calling, whatever that might have been. He loses his soul. So Warwick, this is going to be an interesting sentence, folks. I want you to stick with me after the first sentence. Okay. Don't stop listening after the first sentence, because you're going to get the wrong idea. Okay. So here's the first sentence. Warwick, you have some things in common with Michael Corleone, period. That's the first sentence. Don't stop there. Keep listening. Obviously not the mob life, but living out someone else's vision, in the sense that Michael is a generational heir. to his family business. You were a generational heir to your family business. What jumps out to you about Michael's decision to join the family business and be part of that world?
What's interesting is Michael Corleone's decision to join the family business. It was motivated by his deep love of his father. And in that sense, there is some commonality. I grew up, as listeners know, in a 150-year-old family media business in Australia. And my decision to go into the family business and ultimately, the $2.25 billion failed takeover, that was because of the love of my parents and my family, and in particular, the deep love of my father, or the deep love for my father. So my father, before I made the takeover in 1987, 10 plus years before, he was thrown out by some other family members. As chairman, I dearly loved him. So in one sense, that the fact that he was removed from my perspective unfairly, it was definitely a deep motivator for me to restore the company to the ideals of the founder and launch the takeover. So I always felt like I had no choice. I had to go into the family business, but certainly a large part of it was because of the deep love that I had for my father. I don't know that I was ambivalent or anything. I was sort of locked in there, but the anchor for my journey was driven by the love of my father. So in that sense, there is some commonality. What's sort of interesting in these early scenes is I know Michael says, Michael says in these early scenes, it's not personal, it's strictly business. I think in actuality, it was a bit of both. Yes, he wanted payback for the Turk, Sollozzo doing what he did and trying to kill his father. No question part of it was personal. But also, so there was a sense he wanted revenge on Sollozzo. But yes, there was a business reason. Clearly, Sollozzo was a threat to the family business. That threat had to be removed. So there was a cold calculation that was part of it. So in that sense, yes, there was a personal angle to it, but there was also very much a calm and rational decision. He felt like his dad needs him, the family business needs him, and he had the intelligence, the calmness, and the aptitude for this business. I think he also rightly sized up his brothers. Sonny was a bit of a hothead. Fredo didn't really have the temperament or the courage or just the natural aptitude for the business. So he rightly felt, well, with my dad being in critical condition, we don't know how his health is going to be in the future. If not me, then who? Rationally, he realized that he was the only one of his brothers that could carry on the family business. So he just felt, for the sake of my family and my father, I have to enter in. So once Michael made the hit on Sollozzo and McCluskey, the arc of Michael Corleone's life was forever changed. It's one thing to kind of protect your dad in hospital. That's not illegal. You're not going to be arrested for that. But when you make a hit and kill two people, then obviously that is illegal. That's murder, and there is no going back. There is no getting out of the family business. And what's interesting is Sonny, Tom Hagen, and everybody in the family business, they knew that. They realized this was the Rubicon, the line in the sand. And in one sense, it's moving to see their reaction. They were proud of Michael's wartime service, but they clearly realized that the course of Michael's life was going to change. And in some sense, there was some degree of being conflicted by Sonny and Tom Hagen and the folks that were, showing Michael how to shoot a gun. I mean, knew how to shoot a gun, but in terms of shooting a gun in a hit was a different skill, if you will.
Right.
That
yeah. It's not the battlefield, right? It's a different kind of battlefield, for sure.
Clearly, they were grateful for his help. They realized his aptitude and potential, but yet there was almost a sense of wistfulness, a sense of sadness they realized it was the right business move. It was the right move to take out Sollozzo and McCluskey. Michael was the one to do it. They wouldn't expect that this fellow that wasn't involved in the family business that come back from World War II would do it. They were sort of unsuspecting. But it changed the course of his life. And maybe Michael, in some detached way, realized this could change the course of his life. But there was no, quivering of the lip, no wavering, no sentiment. It was just cool, calm, and detached. The only people that really had a sense of wistfulness, if you will, or a sense of sadness was people around him. Sonny, Tom Hagen, other henchmen that were involved. It's a very interesting and very sad scene.
Yeah, and it's I imagine audiences. I can't remember when the first time I saw the movie what my reaction was, but I imagine audiences feel that wistfulness too, right? As we've been talking about, we don't know what Michael's vision for his life was prior to all of this. We don't know if it was good or bad. He was not involved in the family business, nor was he repulsed by it, as we said. But he seemed like, he had a shot that maybe he was going to break free of it. It seems by the way that you just described how his family reacted, how Sonny reacted even, right? The impetuous, hot-headed one, how Tom Hagen reacted, that they were wistful about that he wasn't going to get away. Right? Maybe they hoped he was going to get away and he wasn't going to get away. Now he was going to be in the family business. And it seems to me the audience would have that same reaction in that, where's Michael going to go? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? And then this happens and you're like, okay, he's got some good qualities, but he's going in a bad direction. And I think that's where the ambivalence that Coppola wants to create in the audience comes. All right. So Michael goes then to Sicily because he's just killed, right? Let's remember he's killed Sollozzo and more importantly, a corrupt police captain, which the Corleone family uses to, kind of not create all out war with law enforcement. But Michael's got to go away for a while. So he goes to Sicily, and it's here that he falls in love with a local girl named Apollonia. It is a sweet relationship. The softer side of Michael reemerges for a little bit. But the family business interrupts his bliss, and she's killed by a car bomb that was meant for him. That second crucible, losing someone he clearly loved very much, further hardens Michael as he returns to the U.S. to fully take the reins of the family business after his father retires. Why does he have to fully take the reins of the family business? Because while he's away, Sonny is murdered. Sonny is murdered after being set up by Connie's husband, Carlo. One of the other heads of the 5 mafia families got to Carlo, and he gave up Sonny's location, and Sonny is shot to death. As the new Don back in the States, Michael is all icy efficiency. That coldness that we saw begin to creep into his demeanor gets harder, gets icier. He tells Kay, who he wants to marry, that he's working in the family business now. She says, "You're not like him, Michael," meaning Vito. He says, he replies that his father is like any other powerful man, like a senator or a president. Clearly, he's making excuses. He's justifying his actions. He's putting, as some people would say, lipstick on a pig, right? He's making something very bad look like something very good. He promises Kay then that in 5 years, he's going to make that the Corleone family will be completely legitimate. But his actions to seize total control of the mafia world show him to maybe be spinning lies, at least to himself. Because things are going to get a lot more illegitimate before they can get a chance to start moving toward legitimate. In his first meeting with his family and his team as the Don, he's cold. The plan is to move to Nevada and wrestle control of a casino owned by Mo Green. Fredo's been working for Mo Green in Las Vegas. When Michael leans on Green to try to buy him out, Fredo tries to intervene on Green's behalf. This is one of the most chilling scenes in The Godfather, showing just how cold-hearted Michael has become, how the crucibles he has accumulated and the ways in which he's dealt with them have eroded not just his character, but his very nature. Let's take a look at the clip now.
I leave for New York tomorrow. Think about a price.
Do you know who I am? I'm Mo Green. I made my bones when you were going out with cheerleaders.
Wait a minute, Mo. Mo, I get an idea. Tom, you're the consigliere. Now you can talk to the Don. You can explain.
Just a minute now. Don is semi-retired, and Mike is in charge of the family business now. If you have anything to say it to Michael.
Mike, you don't come to Las Vegas and talk to a man like Mo Green like that.
Fredo, you're my older brother, and I love you. But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again. Ever.
The scene spotlights the difference between Michael and his father as Don. Vito was quiet, measured, usually acting in a warm way to his family, even when he had to reprimand them. Michael seems empty. Soullessness seems to be in his demeanor. So Warwick, the scene really spotlights the wound of Michael's crucible, doesn't it? As we've said, he has the talent to be the Don, but not the warmth of his father. There's that coldness that we've been talking about. Is it fair to say, as we've been hinting at, that having to pick up the vision of his father to save the family business is his most devastating crucible?
Yeah, it really is, Gary. If Michael was ambivalent about the family business before, it's gone. He's all in. He's made the decision to commit to the family business. After the hit on Vito, even though Vito recovers, he's not the same. Michael is indeed the Godfather now, is indeed the Don. And he's committed to preserving the business and making it successful. And indeed, in a calm, cold, calculating manner, to do whatever it takes to make it successful. He's ice cold efficiency. It's clear he's in charge now by the way he puts his brother Fredo in place. And so you can see the arc of his life changing crucible by crucible and decision by decision. It begins with the hit on Vito and Michael trying to protect him in the hospital, then Michael killing Salazzo and Captain McCluskey, and his sense of soullessness or just sense of his heart being hardened. It just goes to another level when his beloved wife, Apollonia, that I think some would say is the love of his life, when she gets killed, and then his brother Sonny gets killed. At that point, it's like, it's all business, mercy and compassion are irrelevant, and you do whatever it takes to protect the family and advance the family business. No compassion, no warmth, no love. Is just all business. So that ambivalence, which is now almost transformed into lack of empathy, lack of warmth. I'm all in for the family business. If there's any North Star to his soul, it's the love of his father and protecting his father's memory and the family business. It's about the only North Star that I can see in this. Other than that, it's all cold, hard, calculating efficiency. It's all about whatever it takes to win. If making hits advances your family business, then so be it. It's all about the family business, preserving his dad's legacy and preserving and expanding the business. It's cold, hard, calculating efficiency. And it's sad, I think, as the audience, as we watch this, there's still a sense of ambivalence maybe, but I think there's a sense of sadness for what's happening to Michael Corleone's soul.
Yeah. And that sadness, I think, is amplified in one of the scenes that follows. It's his last scene with Vito, his dad. Vito dies by natural causes not long after this scene takes place, but they're sitting alone on the grounds of the family estate, Michael and Vito, and they just sit and they're just chatting. Vito's giving him some counsel on how to handle family business ahead. But Vito's older, slower, weaker, and he starts to talk about he never wanted this for Michael. He says, I thought when your time came, you'd be the one to hold the strings. Senator Corleone, Governor Corleone. All those things that, we talked about earlier, Warwick, about maybe there were some people in the family like Tom Hagen or Sonny that thought Michael would break out of it. The Don himself wanted Michael to break out of it, thought Michael would break out of it. His father had this vision that Michael would go legitimate, that he would have power in the and authority and the ability to make changes in the, as they say in the Godfather films, the legitimate world. And that to me was a to your point, was a sad scene to see the wistfulness on Vito's face, that he got a lot of stuff accomplished in his time as a mafia don. The one thing he couldn't accomplish was setting his son on the road to breaking free of that criminal enterprise. And you could tell that it hurt him. And Michael, to Coppola's credit, Michael doesn't seem to be saddened by it when he's in that scene. He doesn't seem to be angry by it. He just is trying to assure his father, we'll get there, Pop. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. He's just continuing to love his dad and trying to keep pain away from his dad in that scene. So the film ends, as you might expect in a movie about the mafia, in a crescendo of violence. Michael has his men eliminate the heads of all of the other 5 families. Those scenes are intercut between the scenes of the baptism of Connie and Carlo's baby. Interesting side note, the baby in that scene is it's supposed to be a boy. The baby in that scene is actually Francis Ford Coppola's daughter, Sofia Coppola, who is herself a famous director these days. So very interesting that she played the boy who was being baptized. But that scene is symbolically Michael's baptism into his new life. All force, no honor or gentler motives, even helpful motives. His crucibles have cost him his soul. He even orders the killing of his sister Connie's husband, who sold out Sonny. That's the shell of a man, as powerful as he is, head of the last remaining mob family in New York. He's still, it's sad. So, I mean, I'll ask you this, Warwick. That's a sad journey, right? Michael's journey is sad, isn't it? Many of our guests have endured crucibles filled with sadness, but they've moved beyond that. What stands out for you about the journey of Michael Corleone and beyond the crucible sense? Audiences really are, as Coppola wanted, left feeling ambivalent about him, but because they're sad for what he could have been, horrified by what he's become. What beyond the crucible lessons does Michael Corleone teach us?
Michael Corleone has immense talent, a calm temperament that was forged in war. And in that sense, helping the Allies push back against the axis of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan, that was a noble cause. So he could have used his immense talent and calm temperament for good. He could have been potentially a senator or a governor that would have made his family immensely proud. Look, somebody from our family can reach to these heights. His dad would have been incredibly proud. He would have said, my life is worth it. Look what we've achieved in our family. We have achieved respectability, which certainly every family, and I'm certainly this family, also wanted respectability. And that could have been possible given Michael's talent and calm demeanor. So in that sense, there is an alternate history in which Michael's talent and temperament could have been used for good. But that changed inevitably, or almost inevitably, after World War II, when the love of his family, especially his father, came to the fore. It just feels like circumstances conspired against Michael so that alternate history would never happen. And maybe you think, well, it's kind of inevitable. Maybe you think it's kind of inevitable if you grow up in a sort of family mob business. Something bad is going to happen. People are always hitting each other. People are dying. There are mob wars every 5, 10 years, whatever they say in the movie, it's a regular occurrence. Bad things are going to happen. So in that sense, that is tragic because of Michael's love of his father. When his father was hit, the die was sort of cast, and bit by bit, he was drawn close to the family business. So the sad thing is, decision by decision, circumstance by circumstance, his path was determined and his character was eroded. It went from ambivalent about the family business, which, I mean, the starting point wasn't great. Ambivalence about, a mob business when they make money out of people's misery. That's not a good starting point, ambivalence, But it went from not great to so much worse, to an active participant in the acts of violence against other people. So it went from not great to so much worse. So I think it's easy to say that Michael's path and the arc of his life was inevitable. You could make that case, and circumstances certainly didn't help. But what Michael lacked, he lacked a moral core. The only moral core that he had was he loved his family and he loved his dad. But I think what that shows is, yes, I think you look at 100 different mob families. How many get out? I don't know. I'm guessing not a lot. So statistically, the deck was stacked against him. I realize that. We realize that. But what it highlights is the importance of beliefs and values and how they provide or can provide an anchor for your soul. They can enable your gifts and talents to be used for good, to what we call a life of significance, a life on purpose dedicated to serving others. So, absent a moral compass, absent a set of beliefs and values for good, circumstances can indeed conspire to head you down a dark and destructive path. Now, we've found a lot on this podcast that we've had many people go through tragic circumstances, loss of loved ones, abuse, being trafficked. I mean, just horrific circumstances that could have easily made our guests bitter and angry and led them down a dark path. Victims of substance abuse, alcoholism, drug usage, those can indeed over time lead you down a dark, self-destructive path, both to you and to others, and even to others you love. But the guests we've had on our podcast, they've made a decision to not be defined by their worst day, to not be defined by their circumstances, and make decisions step by step for good that enables them to live a life of significance, a life focused on helping others. So I think what this shows you is, yes, the deck was stacked against Michael Corleone. There's no question about that. Was it inevitable? It might feel like close to that, but what could have helped him lead a different life is if he'd come back from World War II with a set of beliefs and values that were different than the way he grew up, with a calm recognition that his family were leading a life of destruction and misery, and that it just wasn't right. Rather than being ambivalent, he can be calm, but rather than being ambivalent in those opening scenes, he could say to Kay, this isn't my life. I love my dad, but I hate what my dad and my family does. It's everything I don't believe in. I love my dad, but I hate the decisions that he's made, and I hate what my family does. I will always love my family. I will never live that life of murder and destruction. I understand it, but I'm repulsed by it. I'm here for my sister's wedding. I honor my family. I do not honor the life and the path they've lived. That would have been a very, very different movie. Michael's relationship with Kay could have been very different, and Kay's respect for Michael would have probably gone through the roof at that point. That would have been a different movie. But that's not the movie we have, and that's not Michael Corleone's story. So very sad, but I think it's really the lesson for us is it's easy to say, there's no way any of us could be Michael Corleone. Well, if you grew up in that family without a set of strong beliefs and values for good, don't be so sure that you couldn't have gone down that path if that's the environment that you grew up in and that's the role models you had. Very easy to say, that couldn't be me. That would be the wrong lesson to take.
Yeah. And I love when this happens on the show because I was going to ask you a question that sort of led to some of those other points that you just made, and you've sort of were so passionate. You kind of covered most of the stuff that you could have answered in the last question. So I'll switch the question up a little bit and ask you this, because this is the second week in a row. We've done 2 episodes of this series now where we've had movies focused on characters who never bounced anywhere from their crucibles except maybe deeper into them. You've indicated in this case, in The Godfather, why that happened with Michael. We talked last week about why that happened in Citizen Kane with Charles Foster Kane. But when you say, don't be so sure that it couldn't be you, when you see Citizen Kane, when you see The Godfather, there's a reason why you say that. And I know that you believe, I know you've seen it borne out in the guests we've had on this show when we're doing not series on movies. What's the key, the one key element, if you find yourself drifting off course, if you find yourself not living life according to the character that you want to live, the values that you have, what's the hope? I'll take your role that you do when we're talking to guests. What's the word of hope you would have for folks who have just heard 2 weeks of us talking about pretty unrepentant and at the end of the day sad and destructive characters? What's your word of hope for folks that yes, beware. It could, don't think you can't be that way, but you don't have to be that way. You don't have to be the way of whatever your crucible is. What's your word of hope for those folks?
We're all responsible for our own actions and own decisions, which means on any given day, whenever today is, we can make a decision. How do we want the rest of our life to play out? Whether we're 20, 80, 60, 30, it doesn't matter. Whatever stage you're in, there's always an opportunity to change the course of your life. And that's when you really need to dig down deep and ask, what is it you want your life to be about? Life is about choices, but sometimes there are right answers and wrong answers, objectively right and objectively wrong. And one is your beliefs and values. If they're toward what we call a life of significance, a life on purpose, focused on others, that's the right answer, because ultimately everybody wants joy and fulfillment and happiness. Well, that doesn't come from hurting other people. Now, that doesn't come from it's all about me and money and fame. That comes through a sense of humility and serving others. That psychologically, or if you look at major religions, everybody agrees on that. So even if you're a Michael Corleone, calm, dispassionate person, if you think, I'd like joy and fulfillment, and what person doesn't? What Michael Corleone missed is joy and fulfillment comes from serving others, from doing good. And so all of us have that decision to make. Once you make that decision, I'm going to live my life for good. I'm going to live my life on purpose. I do want a life of significance in the way we've defined it. That is the first step to changing the course of your life. Because then you've got an anchor, then you've got a filter, a prism with which to make decisions. So there is hope in the sense that we're all the captain of our own ships. We're all the actor in our own play. We get to decide what the script looks like. We can rewrite the script. On any given day, you can burn the old script, toss it out and say, okay, I'm going to lead a different life from today. Each day, there's an opportunity to make a positive decision and a positive move forward. And
this is the opportunity to say the closing credits are rolling. We have finished episode 2 of our series, Classic Films, Classic Crucible Lessons. We promise it's going to get more uplifting as time goes on here. Just so happens AFI picked these 2 movies, and they are legitimately, they are, set aside the morality on display. They are very good movies, and they certainly have entertained and led to conversations just like this many, many times. Speaking of conversations, speaking of things, we want you to have a bit of an internal conversation with yourself, a question of reflection we like to leave you with at the end of each episode of this series. And that this week is this. As you consider your vision, is it a match for both your talents and your temperament? Ask yourself this question, why or why not, as you ponder that. Is your vision, this is the important point Warwick was making right there at the end, is your vision anchored by your beliefs and values? Ask yourself that question. If the answer is yes, you're in a good spot. If the answer is no, you have, in the words of Beyond the Crucible, some soul work to do. So thank you for spending this time with us, folks. We will be back next week for part 3 of our series on the AFI's top 100 films and the classic Crucible lessons you can learn from them. Warwick and I'll both be here, and we'll save a seat for you. Welcome to a journey of transformation with the Beyond the Crucible assessment. Unlike any other, this tool is designed to guide you from adversity to achievement. As you answer a few insightful questions, you won't just find a label like the helper or the individualist. Instead, you'll uncover your unique position in the journey of resilience. This assessment reveals where you stand today, the direction you should aim for, and crucially, the steps to get there. It's more than an assessment. It's a roadmap to a life of significance. Ready? Visit beyondthecrucible.com. Take the free assessment and start charting your course to a life of significance today.